The cold wind swept through the streets of Chicago, carrying with it the whispers of impending doom. In the heart of the city's criminal underworld, tension simmered like a pot ready to boil over. It was St. Valentine's Day, but there would be no love in the air, only the scent of gunpowder and the stench of betrayal. At 2122 North Clark Street stood the SMC Cartage Company Garage, a nondescript building that masked the sinister operations within. Behind its innocuous facade, the notorious Al Capone and his South Side gang had made their headquarters. But Capone's grip on power was threatened by a rival gang led by George Bugs Moran. Bugs Moran paced the floor of his headquarters, a dingy office tucked away in a seedy corner of the city. He knew that Capone was gunning for him, but he refused to back down. The North Side gang had been encroaching on Capone's territory, hijacking his liquor shipments and cutting into his profits. Moran glanced at the clock on the wall. It was nearing 10 o'clock, time for his men to make their move. Little did he know that Capone's henchmen were already closing in on their target. At 10:30 a.m., a group of 7 men dressed as police officers pulled up outside the SMC Cartage Company garage. They had been carefully selected for their marksmanship and their unwavering loyalty to Capone. Disguised in police uniforms, they looked every bit the part of law enforcement officers. As Bugs Moran's men unloaded a shipment of bootleg whiskey, the fake police officers stormed into the garage, their Tommy guns blazing. In a matter of minutes, the floor was littered with bodies. 7 members of the North Side gang lay dead, their blood staining the concrete. But Bugs Moran himself had narrowly escaped the massacre. He arrived at the scene just minutes after the shooting had stopped, only to find his men lying lifeless on the ground. Enraged and grief-stricken, Moran vowed to avenge their deaths. News of the St. Valentine's Day massacre spread like wildfire through the streets of Chicago. The city was plunged into a state of shock and disbelief as the gruesome details emerged. It was the deadliest gangland massacre in the city's history, and it sent shockwaves rippling through the criminal underworld. Al Capone, however, remained untouchable. Despite widespread speculation that he had ordered the massacre, there was little evidence to link him to the crime. He continued to reign supreme as the undisputed kingpin of Chicago's underworld, his power only growing stronger in the wake of the bloodbath. As for Bugs Moran, he never recovered from the loss of his men. His once powerful gang was decimated, and he faded into obscurity, a mere shadow of his former self. The St. Valentine's Day massacre had claimed its victims, but the legacy of bloodshed and betrayal would live on for decades to come. The St. Valentine's Day massacre remains one of the most infamous events in American criminal history. It serves as a chilling reminder of the deadly consequences of greed, power, and betrayal. The streets of Chicago may have been washed clean of blood, but the scars of that fateful day would never truly heal. As for Al Capone, he would eventually meet his downfall at the hands of the law. In 1931, he was convicted of tax evasion and sentenced to 11 years in prison. But even behind bars, his legend would live on, immortalized in countless books, movies, and television shows. And so, the tale of the St. Valentine's Day massacre endures, a grim reminder of the dark underbelly of the American dream, where ambition and violence walk hand in hand, and where even the strongest among us can fall prey to the lure of power and prestige. The town of Villisca, nestled in the heart of Iowa, was like any other small American community in the early 20th century. Its streets were lined with quaint homes, and the sound of children playing echoed through the air. But beneath its serene facade lurked a darkness that no one could have predicted. It was a warm summer evening in June 1912 when the Moore family retired to their modest home on 2nd Street. Josiah Moore, a respected businessman in town, walked alongside his wife, Sarah, as they ushered their 4 children Herman, Catherine, Boyd, and Paul towards their cozy abode. As they entered their house, the scent of freshly baked pie greeted them, a testament to Sarah's loving care for her family. Little did they know that this would be their last peaceful evening together. The sun had barely risen when Villisca awoke to a chilling discovery. The neighbors, noticing an unusual silence emanating from the Moore household, grew concerned and decided to investigate. What they found would haunt them for years to come. As the townsfolk gathered outside the Moore residence, their worst fears were realized. The front door stood ajar, and an eerie stillness pervaded the air. With trembling hands, they pushed open the door and stepped inside, only to be met with a scene of unimaginable horror. The bodies of the Moore family lay strewn across the rooms, their faces frozen in expressions of terror. Blood stained the walls, and the floorboards creaked beneath their feet. It was a massacre unlike anything Villisca had ever seen. Word of the Villisca Axe Murders spread like wildfire, attracting attention from far and wide. Law enforcement officials descended upon the town, determined to uncover the truth behind this heinous crime. Detective James Wilkerson, a seasoned investigator from Des Moines, took charge of the case. With meticulous precision, he combed through the crime scene, searching for any clue that might lead to the perpetrator. But despite his best efforts, the killer remained elusive. The murder weapon, a bloody axe, was found in the house, but it yielded no fingerprints or other identifying evidence. The town was gripped by fear as rumors swirled about a shadowy figure lurking in their midst. In the wake of the murders, Villisca descended into chaos. Suspicions ran rampant, and no one knew who to trust. Friends turned against friends, and whispers of conspiracy filled the air. As the weeks turned into months, the investigation stalled, leaving the townsfolk frustrated and afraid. Some even began to question whether justice would ever be served. Meanwhile, the Moore family was laid to rest in a solemn ceremony attended by the entire community. But even as they mourned their loss, the specter of the killer loomed large, casting a shadow over their once peaceful town. Just when it seemed that all hope was lost, Detective Wilkerson received a crucial tip from an unlikely source. A local drifter, known only as the Stranger, claimed to have information about the murders that could crack the case wide open. With little to lose, Wilkerson tracked down the mysterious informant and listened intently as he recounted his tale. According to the Stranger, he had stumbled upon a group of men plotting the murders in a secluded barn on the outskirts of town. As Wilkerson pressed for more details, the Stranger grew increasingly agitated, his eyes darting nervously around the room. It was clear that he was afraid for his life, but he refused to back down. Armed with this newfound information, Wilkerson launched a full-scale investigation into the alleged conspiracy. He interviewed witnesses, pored over old newspaper clippings, and followed every lead with dogged determination. What he uncovered shocked him to the core. It seemed that the Moore family had been targeted by a secret society known as the Midnight Assassins, who believed them to be harboring a dangerous secret. But as Wilkerson delved deeper into the web of lies and deception, he realized that the truth was far more sinister than he could have ever imagined. The Midnight Assassins were not just a band of renegades, they were part of a larger conspiracy that reached all the way to the highest echelons of power. As Wilkerson closed in on the truth, he found himself face to face with the mastermind behind the Villisca Axe Murders. In a dramatic showdown that played out in the dead of night, he confronted the killer and brought him to justice once and for all. But even as the townsfolk breathed a collective sigh of relief, they knew that the scars left by the murders would never fully heal. The Moore family's legacy lived on in the hearts of those who had loved them, a reminder of the fragility of life and the darkness that lurked just beyond the veil of normalcy.